Good evening and welcome to the August 23rd, 2023 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. I'll rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, see? Okay. Yep, sorry, sit down. Oh, roll call. Come on, roll call. I know, it's right in front of me. Jocelyn Upsella here. David Gilbert, excused. Jennifer Harridan-Wilson here. Dan Jasnow
here.
Courtney McCarthy here. Kent Schott
Here.
Sarah Tormey excused. Now please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we would now like to open the public hearing of the 2023-2024 district-wide safety budget. Who is presenting on that?
Okay, well, I am.
I guess you are.
And I don't have a formal presentation with slides and that sort of thing because this plan is very similar to our plans that we implemented in the past 2 years. We worked collaboratively with Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES on developing this plan. This is a requirement as per New York State. And I think it's important for the board and community just to know that if you're not familiar with the plan, basically this is an overview. And that's very deliberate because this is a public document. It has been posted on the website since late July. The board does need to formally adopt the safety plan, and then we submit it to New York State. There is a more detailed safety plan that is about 10 times the length of this, and it goes into specifics about our school protocol. That is not for public consumption for obvious reasons. There are security issues with releasing that, but that is something that our admin team, our faculty, board members, and local law enforcement and emergency responders have access to. It goes into a state portal, and that will be reviewed by the Board of Education in exec session after this public meeting. This plan talks about the drills. It has our district-wide safety team listed, the names of the local emergency responders that participate in the district safety committee, and just an overview of the safety features in the district. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them from the board. I know you've had time with it, so if there are no other questions.
I just had one question. I wanted to be sure that when we refer to different people, we kept the same title throughout the document.
Yes, and
I'm just having trouble logging in to see it. I'm sure it's.
I made that adjustment.
Okay.
Because
I haven't been able to figure out how to get into.
Yeah, that was a great catch. For a school business administrator, I added some of Joe's other titles, but for the purpose of this plan, I think it, again, just for efficiency, you're listed as school business administrator throughout. And thank you. Jocelyn also made a helpful comment about adding that this past year we did approve an agreement with the Putnam County Sheriff's Department to give them emergency access to our camera system only when needed in case of emergency. So that is listed in here as well, just so the public is aware of it.
Any other questions or comments from board members? And it would now be time to take any questions from the public, but we have no public. So this is now, we will now be closing the public hearing for the district-wide safety plan. Now we're going to move on to opening the public hearing for the 2023-2024 emergency remote instruction plan. Take it away, James.
So Mr. Yad's going to talk about this. He developed this plan for us.
So several of the tech directors collaborated, and then we used almost like a Mad Libs format where we filled in blanks where we needed to. But for the most part, it was very collaborative between districts because we kind of view it the same way. When this first came out, we were hesitant to do it because why are we doing this? We just finished the pandemic. But July, at the beginning of July, definitely kind of opened our eyes, especially in this area with the flooding. If that had happened this week, Highland Falls would be, in a problem and probably would have had to enact their remote instruction plan. So this is the reason why we do it. It's not only for the pandemic, but for bad weather and that might be getting worse over the next few years. So the plan lays out something very similar to what Garrison did during the pandemic with remote instruction and how to deploy the Chromebooks, how to set up instruction that attendance will be taken. By state law, we would have to take attendance even if it was remote, just so that we could get the state aid. So it really just lays out that we'll be basically following the exact same schedule. The other reason why we might have to do remote instruction is if, heaven forbid, we were to have a very bad winter and we were out of snow days, the state is no longer just saying, don't worry about it. They will actually make you do it. One thing that has changed, and this changed about 3 or 4 years ago, but then the pandemic hit and no one really paid attention, is yes, we still have 180 days, but now there is an hour component. So the hour component for K through 6 is 900 hours, and then 7 through 12, 7 through 8 for us, but 7 through 12 for the state is 990 hours. So there used to be rules where it was you couldn't have half days, and if there was a full moon and it was on the second Tuesday, then you could, and all this. And they got rid of all of that and basically said, do what you want, have as many half days, but you got to get to 900 hours if you're K6, 990 if you're 7 through 12, and this is you have to have 180 days. So this is one way of accomplishing that. I work with Joe's office as far as the SAMS report, just to make sure, and the other attendance report, we have to actually submit an Excel spreadsheet to the state at the end of the school year and upload it and say, yes, we actually did accomplish it. And if there was any snow days, we have to list all that and upload all that to the state. That's a little bit about the remote instruction.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Young?
I have one question. Can you just speak to how this is implemented with respect to the pre-K students? Are they exempt from the hour requirement? And I know they don't get, the devices,
right?
And they have limited attention span.
Sure.
So how
sure.
does this affect them, or if so,
Sure.
what do we?
So both pre-K and K, which a lot of people don't know, are not, including kindergarten, are not state mandated grades in the state of New York. To answer your question, no, there is no hour requirement, even for kindergarten, let alone pre-K. That's why there are still like a few holdouts upstate and even a few around here that still have half-day kindergarten. Not many, but there's still a few.
So you've got pre-K and you get extra snow days. Any other questions?
Just a request some of the document refers to K-12 while other parts of the document refer to K-8. So that could just be remedied to be reflective of K-8.
Thank you. Yes.
And just related to that, is that because we have no control over our 9 through 12 graders? Right?
So it's like we are a K through 8, we're
right.
K through
So it's not, it's like a
12
district. Okay.
But
Yeah. The school plan and a district plan, in a sense.
What
I mean, I don't know, I just want to make sure we don't get anything wrong.
when it comes to state reporting, counting,
Okay.
Highland Falls, they report the hours that their high school students have to meet, and they're held culpable for
So
the
they'll be in
9 hours.
charge of 9 to 12.
Yes,
So we should write K-8.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
No other questions? We'll move on to questions from the public. And we will move on to closing the public hearing of the emergency remote instruction plan. And we've got one more, opening the public hearing for the 2023-2024 Code of Conduct.
Okay, I'll take this one. It's pretty straightforward. Last year, we did a major revision, as board members may recall, of the Code of Conduct. Every year, it must be adopted by the board and approved by the board. Allison and Mig, we asked her to take a look at it. There were 2 minor changes, and they're highlighted if you had a chance to review them, but I'm happy to summarize them. The first deals with cell phones in school. And we, James, Allison, and I have had numerous conversations with faculty, even with some students. And what you're seeing is more and more schools are restricting cell phone use in the classroom, definitely, but even some are going school-wide. We felt here in Garrison, just looking at our model and our needs, that the most important place to be strict about cell phone use is during the classroom. We didn't feel a need to have a cell phone-free school day where lunch and recess, children would not have access to phones. We think for the most part, our children are responsible during recess time if they choose to listen to some music or read on their phone, especially if it's a rainy day and they're indoors. We do believe that we should treat them with respect and trust. And if there is, an occasional bump in the road and a child is using a device inappropriately, we can manage and handle them. But in the classrooms, it's another story. What we're learning is even when students have their phone on vibrate in their pocket and they're focused on a lesson, that vibration alone will break their concentration. And even if they don't answer the phone or read the text message, there's an anxiety that builds that there's this desire or this curiosity as to who's contacting me or what update. So what we're going to have students do is either, one, lock the phone away in their locker, and every student is provided with a secure locker, or 2, in every classroom there will be a holder that children, when they walk through the door, the teacher will prompt them, if you have a cell phone, please deposit it here. They will deposit it in a safe place. And then at the end of the period, they can retrieve their phones. So we're going to call this classroom-free, cell phone-free classroom school. But other times we will allow use. So that is in the Code of Conduct. And the other minor adjustment was just for AI. Not that it's an issue, but Allison did add to the list of inappropriate use using AI and presenting it as your report. So basically plagiarism, which is nothing new, but we did add, of course, just a line about artificial intelligence. So other than that, it's the same Code of Conduct as last year. If there were no other questions, then later on.
Actually, I have a sense of the theme here. Because it being a 12 or 13-year-old now in this country at this time is different from what it was when back in the 19th century I was 12 years old. And it's been such a transformative experience for kids. I mean, in a mostly negative way, not in my case, of course, but for the other ones. And I just wonder whether there were to be some thought about having a more aggressive way of addressing this cell phone addiction issue, because boy, they really are addicted, and their concentration spans are limited by it, I'm sure. I mean, I see that with other people's kids. And I just think it's worth having a discussion, putting it on some agenda or other, whether this is something that ought to be addressed affirmatively.
David, I think, you're right, and we did, by the way, in our faculty meeting at the end of the year, we went back and forth on, should we take the approach or recommend to the board a school-wide ban? So, from 8:30 till 3 p.m., no phones at all. Most districts are moving in the same direction that we are. In fact, Haldane is rolling out, cell phone-free classrooms, but they're allowing them during free time, lunchtime, that sort of thing.
But I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is that there is an addiction issue with
Yes.
these things, right? And that our concern for these kids ought to include this phenomenon that we're all living through and we can all see. And whether there ought to be some reflection or some brainstorming about what might be done, apart from whether they have the phones in school or not,
Okay.
seems to be appropriate.
It'd be interesting to hear in a couple of months back from some of our teachers, since they have full buy-in to this new policy of having cell phone-free classrooms, to hear how it has gone, how it has perhaps changed the classroom, if there was an adjustment from students, and from there, maybe it's a suggestion to the PTA to find a speaker to bring somebody in on a weeknight for
A psychologist who's conscious of this and looking at this, I'm sure that there were plenty of psychologists out there who are very aware of what's going on.
Yeah, I think with our new psychologist on staff, we could just ask Rover what's his take on it, or what is his information on it, what's his expertise in it. And I think just guidance department writ large could address it. I think that PTA or even submitting GSEF grants to bring in speakers that would not only address the faculty and students, but also parents, right? Because I think, a lot of it is community-wide, right? It's not just in the school. But I do think that in a broader scheme, the use of phones, not only the addiction part, which is very kind of dopamine related, but the idea of, what you're accessing and, the kind of information you're receiving, which is like digital literacy, so to say, can totally be linked to one of our Vision of the Graduate skills. And I think that some schools some boards have taken on policies. I don't want to add policies. We haven't taken up binder, but what I want to say is that, take on policies that recommend that part of instruction in the classroom is also around this, which would of course burden our teachers because it adds something to them, but maybe James does something like that with folks.
Funny you brought that up. James, we have scheduled for our opening conference today,
Let's hear.
digital literacy. James, take it away.
So this summer, there's computer science and digital fluency standards. This year, 9 through 12, it's mandatory that it's rolled out. Next year, it's for K through 8 that it's rolled out. So I spent a lot of time trying to see what resources were there and literally going standard by standard and finding different activities to go along with it. Specific to cell phones and our middle school students, this year we're going to have a digital literacy course that Leslie D'Onofrio is going to be teaching, and part of the curriculum that I am meeting with her during superintendent's conference days is dealing with cell phones, but also just digital literacy in general.
Good. And that's for the students,
It's for the students.
and it's optional or mandatory?
It's mandatory.
It's just like part of one of a day. It's just
It's what we
it's
call
not like an elective.
no, it's what we call the wheel. So
Yeah,
it's like
right.
you do STEAM, you do digital literacy, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
But to pick up on what Jocelyn was saying, but this is a community issue, not just a school issue. I think if parents don't care, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference what we tell kids in school. I think one thing we could think about is actually having some program to encourage parents to come and talk to a psychologist or to an author or whoever about this. This is, I mean, I don't want to exaggerate this because, you know, it's not the worst thing on the planet, but it's kind of a scourge. It's not a good thing. It's called, and to actually make it one of our tasks this year to try and educate parents about what psychology knows about the addictive nature of this and what they can do with it strikes me as being a noble effort.
There's a great documentary called Screenagers, and a lot of schools have done public viewing of the movie, and it's not only you know, not to be gender specific, but this is where it lies, is that the boys are more on video games and the girls are more on their cell phones. And so the movie goes through like people that were heavily addicted and shows like the backstory of it all. So that's, you know, one thing that
Well, there's
could
a PTA
investigate.
event.
We will follow up on that. And in addition to what we're doing for our students, open it up to parent information night, or partner with the PTA, possibly GSEF. We have the meeting tomorrow, so we will discuss it further.
Can I say on this topic just really quickly, because you mentioned, well, there's two things. One, elementary school students also have phones. So I don't know, for
Well,
example, they don't have,
it applies to them, even though it's not as much.
but they don't have
an issue.
lockers, so making sure that, you know, whatever teachers have their bins.
Yeah, it'll be, they almost look like,
Yeah, like Matt showed us. the
like shoe
Yeah.
holders, or, what are they called, James, that we purchased for? Cell
shoe
phone
trays.
holders or shoe trays, cell phone.
No, that's great. I just want them to, I mean, because poor, you know, Cats and Kuchera, Kuchera and Pitt are gonna have to deal with fourth and fifth graders.
Yes.
Having them. But related to what you just said about the vibration in the pocket, whether or not they look at them, I just want to know what people feel about smartwatches, which more elementary school students have than cell phones. Because I think the thing about a smartwatch, where not that I don't understand any of it, but I don't think you can text from them or search, but you can read.
Yes, you can.
Okay, maybe you can text, so even that. So
And
anyway,
search.
but you can certainly read and get the dopamine rush and get the distraction if your watch beeps, even if it's your mom saying, you know, how are you feeling? You know, which is like the nice part about it. So I just wonder where we draw a line on the storage of the devices.
We were talking about earlier watches, and there are many different versions, right? So some have more
Complicated.
capability than others. The approach that we're going to take is not have them turn in their watches. We're going to allow students, if they have a smartwatch, they can keep it. However, work with educating parents and asking the faculty to kind of monitor that, and if they believe that the watches, you know, our main conversation at the end of the school year was about cell phones.
Yeah.
The watches did not seem to be as much of an issue, but we'll circle back, and maybe where we land is that students can keep the watches, but we educate our parents to say, during the school day, unless there's some tremendous emergency, don't text your child, don't message them, because it is a distraction. So maybe just, approaching it in a positive way and partnering with parents and asking them to support us on this, I think could potentially work. I don't know. We're not at the point of collecting the watches.
No, that's fine. So then do you think it's a communication, like in the form of an email? Do you think it's the PTA also having like who is communicating and educating?
I think our principal,
Yeah. Okay.
Allison is ready to, during the opening of the school year, she does grade level meetings, so she'll be meeting with all of our students and more messaging to parents. And I love the idea of a parent like education night with some experts. I think we'd have a packed audience for that.
Well, I'm not going to go on about this too much, but from what I can see, and I may have missed something, school boards around the country have not really been addressing this aggressively. Some that owns the school, but I mean, I think it would reflect well on us and on what's distinctive about this community is to really do a deep dive, not a rhetorical thing. I mean, I don't know if people have this on kids, but I'm sure that there are people who do, psychologists who are looking at this stuff. And for us to actually take a leadership position in the state and this country on this particular issue, which has got to be in the minds of millions of parents around the country.
Sure.
So I just want to add, the one concern I have about taking away cell phones is if you have a student with a medical condition that relies on messages like from a Dexcom to let them know that their insulin is low. So I didn't see anywhere in here that there could be medical exemptions made. I'm sure you could. I wouldn't want to have it put on an IEP, but I think it's something we should be aware of that.
Yeah, that or, potentially a 504 plan.
I'm saying I
Assistive
wouldn't want to
technologies.
have us take away the phone pending a CSE meeting when it's approved.
Oh, no, yeah. No, if we had a medical reason to have a child keep their phone.
I don't know if you want to spell that out in the code of conduct.
We'll think about it. I'm thinking it's not necessary because we certainly make many types of accommodations.
We can reach out to Nurse Melissa about also.
Yeah, good point.
One additional comment on the code of conduct. There's some inconsistency in the list of protected classes in discriminations. In the discrimination context, gender is defined as including gender identity and expression, but then sometimes gender and gender identity is used, sometimes gender expression is used. Creed is in there sometimes, but not others. I just think I think Department of Justice, New York State have lists of protected classes. I think we should just look into standardizing throughout the document.
I think that's a great idea. Related to it, I was wondering if we could add age, but it's not a protected class. But what I mean is, and maybe it's only pertaining to dress code, but like we've all seen our students, that the fashion of today does not match our dress code, and it makes the life of parents and faculty and it's very difficult to navigate. And sometimes it gets played out based on age, and I think I don't want to make it difficult, right? So I mean, obviously the dress code says dress is nothing from you have to be covered from above the knee to shoulder to the top
Chest,
of the chest
shoulders.
with a strap, which is fine, except that leaves sort of like full coverage, which is not what people wear. Many young children expressing as female will often not do that, and to have that be prohibited in the code of conduct, but then allowed in practice, I'm fine with the practice being allowed, but I don't want it then in the code of conduct. Because I think it just makes everyone's life very confusing. And it is, that's a big one. I know to unpack, like, what should we do about that?
Well, I think we should take a closer look at it.
Yeah.
So let's.
I feel bad because we want to approve this. We want our families and our students to sign on,
Could we
right?
approve it and then amend it at a later
Okay,
date?
so, okay.
Exactly. I would say let's approve it because the school year is opening.
Yeah.
Next board meeting in September. I would say Dan, what you brought up, I think that's more of just going through it very carefully, making sure it's consistent. So we'll address that immediately before we send this out. The dress code, Jocelyn, it's a little bit more of a complicated discussion, and I'll bring it up to Mrs. Mick, and we'll get back to you. I agree, though, that if you have a dress code and we're not enforcing it,
I know, so
makes
it's
sense.
almost like, can we change it somehow or eliminate? I don't know what to do, but I know that Mrs. Emig and faculty probably have ideas because they have to deal with it every day.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm assuming.
Yes, yes.
So I have two quick questions that might be more clerical in nature. One is we refer to students as his and her. I wonder if we should also have they or their consistently through the document. And also at the bottom of page 21, we talk about the Dignity Act coordinator / principal. Is it that the principal is the Dignity Act coordinator? But isn't it but I don't think it should be listed as Dignity Act coordinator / principal. It should be Dignity Act coordinator because they're appointed as such, and there might be a time when it's not the principal.
I'll take a look at it.
The bottom of page 21.
Yes, I'd have to look at the reorg, because we're so small. A lot of times the coordinator is an assistant principal. you know, and then.
She was appointed as board.
I think we always appoint her.
No, she is, but in a larger district, the DASSA coordinator is usually the AP.
Or other people. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
or
that
whoever, yeah.
it is the Dignity Act coordinator, not necessarily the principal. And so
Oh, I see.
I
Yes,
should just put Dignity Act
I got it.
coordinator and not principal.
just for clarification. Yeah.
Okay, I have one other quick thing, no, two quick things. On page 26 plus, there's just weird formatting, so it's just like indentation. But the other one is, I believe the video surveillance system is used in disciplinary action, like to review what maybe really happened on campus. And I don't know anywhere, either on the website or in the code of conduct, that like alerts parents or informs parents that we have this amazing asset / inclusionary asset, right? So should it be spelled out that like we use this, we have this, and it's part of discipline?
Well, we don't always use it.
No, but it has been,
But we do.
but it's been used,
We have
right?
the signage, which is required by law.
I don't know.
I don't think it hurts. I don't think it hurts to be transparent about that. But I would say, you know, percentage on it, but I think it's a small percentage of disciplinary issues where we do actually go to the cameras. It's not, you know, so.
Well, in the
not
past
every-
year, how many times have you used it?
Probably a handful, if that. You could
Well,
definitely
we probably
no
only
more
had a
than
handful of
maybe 3
disciplinary.
or 4, and I think you've had more disciplinary than that.
So how do the parents or the community know, besides walking in the front door, that there's video around?
The only communication we have is the signage that's up. It is in the safety plan.
Is it the safety plan?
Yeah,
So do
it's in the safety
parents
plan.
have are encouraged to review that too? Because as long as people are alerted to it, I think it's like a very important thing that there's no videos in the bathrooms. Like, I think that's an important thing for people to know, but there are in the
So he
hallways.
knows that for students as well. It's after.
Well, I know that.
You know,
But
Johnson,
you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
I see no downside to adding it
just a,
to
I don't know, just to.
the
we
code
have
of
a
conduct
system
that it is there, and it may be,
it may be used.
it may be used to verify, you know,
Yeah.
behavior or something
I
like
don't know.
that. We'll come up. There's no downside. I think what you're getting at is, you know, the more we are open
Right.
about that there are cameras here.
The more comfortable
Transparent,
people
yeah.
will feel once it's used.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, good point. Okay, so we'll find an appropriate place to add that as well.
I'm sorry, but I actually have 2 other things.
Don't worry, I'm gonna
We're
add
making
one
it
more
better.
too.
On page 38, when you talk about what has to be documented in terms of searches, while you have time and location of search, you do not list the date that the search occurred. It might be implicit, but I would prefer that it's explicit. And then for a further conversation, really for implementation for next year, would be not this school year, but in the future, a consideration of having like a summary document that students also sign.
Oh, I love that
There's
idea.
there's a volume. of
There is
students.
that, right?
Yeah, I think we
It's not in this document.
no.
There should be an appendix in here, for
It's
sure.
it's included in the student.
Who
Okay,
signs
so
that?
We should have the parents signing in here. The last page is parent signature.
I'm not sure that, I don't remember that page being in it, I'm not sure, maybe
It's
it
on
was.
page 45.
No,
is the
I know.
parent signature.
And I didn't see that, but I know that there is a separate code summary.
Yeah, we have a summary that's given to students and reviewed. Like I said, the principal does that at the onset of the school year at grade level. But it should be included. You're right.
And then just on that page, page 45, where the parents are supposed to sign, they're wrong here. On top of that.
Oh, respect. Thank you.
Everyone at work always asks me to perform.
Wow.
Yes, thank you.
Thank God there's no public here now. Wait, so many questions. We already. That's a long talk.
Any
appreciate
further comments, questions, thoughts on the code of conduct? Okay, and no questions from the public. Thank you for all of your work, and thank you to Allison and Meg for doing this work. So this concludes the public hearing for the 2023-2024 Code of Conduct. Okay, so now we're moving on to accept agenda changes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion? Does anybody have any changes? Okay. Move to roll call vote. No, not roll call. Move to a vote. See, edit that language. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Right. Moving on to board discussions. Next up on our agenda is discussion of the summer board retreat. Of course, I do not have all of my notes in front of me because I was not expecting to run this meeting. Sarah regrets that she was unable to come tonight. She got stuck up north for a little bit longer. So everybody can help me fill in the details, but we had a really successful board retreat in early July. Got to welcome our 2 new board members and throw them right into a nice 6-hour meeting right here in Learning Commons. We discussed Carl's goals, our own goals.
Merger of the districts.
Yeah, we had a really, really productive meeting with one of our lawyers, learning all about consolidation, the difference between consolidation and annexation, in discussion, about the possibility, what we needed to know, all the ins and outs. I don't remember what else we discussed.
I think we discussed the budget advisory committee, but that's on the agenda.
Great, we'll move on to that next.
Can I raise a question about the annexation merger discussion? So that issue was raised to me outside of the board by some community members, and I think there's clearly there's interest in it. And one question that was raised was whether the district would have to outlay the funds for the feasibility study, or if so, if we would expect to receive grants to cover the cost of the feasibility. So essentially, at the end of the day, would it cost the district anything just to conduct a feasibility study, or would the state not step in until later on? Say we got farther down the road. I think that's, to the extent that people think that it's something that should be explored, I think it would be helpful to know just whether or not there would be that initial expenditure of $40,000 or $50,000 just to undertake the feasibility study.
I was also approached by people in the community about this topic. And I guess the question on my mind is whether this board is interested in exploring it, and also whether the housing board is interested in exploring it. Because I don't really want to explore grant funding if I don't know if it's even an issue, if we're even interested in doing a feasibility study. And it not only has to be our board that wants to do it, but it has to be the housing board. And I went through their agendas for the last year, and I've seen nothing on their agenda about it at all.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, I think a lot depends on, whether it would cost us anything. Obviously, grants are also not certain, right? I mean, you apply for a grant, you don't know if you're going to get it. To me, $40,000 on a feasibility study that, may have limited legs doesn't make a lot of sense. But if the state, we have some certainty, if we know from history that the state has always reimbursed for feasibility studies, I think maybe there's no harm in exploring it further, and then at least we can all be working from the same set of facts.
If we want to explore the option.
Yeah,
I think that it's the question is, do we want to explore the option of annexation, or do we want to explore the option of a feasibility study? And those are 2 different things, I think, right? Because the feasibility study just alerts folks to what might play out, and then we can make a decision based on the results. if we're interested in annexation.
But it's not only us who have to be interested.
Oh, no, I think for both is what I mean, but like, I think that, by addressing Dan's question, it doesn't mean that we're interested in annexation. It means we're interested in what a study would reveal to both towns or multiple towns. Right?
What I think we know without a feasibility study is that there's a significant difference in the tax rates.
Yeah.
Between Garrison and again, you know, we all assume it's a merger with Haldane, but Valley is an option, certainly. And so, you know, for that reason alone, I clearly recall Pat Fitzgerald saying that it's highly unlikely that you would get support. You know, Gervin and Filazzo has dealt with this and supported many districts through every phase of the process. Well, 5 is a lot because it doesn't come up all that often. You know, the history is, you know, 50, 60 years ago, there were many more consolidations. But, you know, the remaining districts that are independent, such as we are, there's usually a reason for that. So with the tax disparity, in his experience and his judgment, the likelihood of gaining support would be a lot. So do you invest the time and potentially money or potentially pursue a grant? And, you know, we definitely should find that answer, Dan. But I think that's the question at hand. And as Jen is pointing out, Garrison can't decide alone to do a feasibility study. It's got to be together with Haldane. I did speak with Phil Benante because I know I did hear from one parent representing other parents in our community who were interested in the topic. Phil, to his knowledge, no board members have raised this, and no community members thus far. But if they do, he said we certainly can get board liaisons from Haldane as well as Garrison together to discuss it further. So maybe that is the first step, as well as finding out this grant money.
Would we need a partner just to undertake a feasibility study, or would we? Yeah.
Because you have to know who you're looking to partner with, because that's very specific.
Yeah.
But was there a study in the past that we could review? Did you see?
Phil said he recalls somewhere in the archives that there was some report done. He doesn't know how extensive it was. Look, nothing would stop us. I really hesitate to say this, but you know, asking Joe to start with an analysis of taxes, the tax impact of a merger.
That's basically what you can do as a back of the envelope calculation is you can take the tax warrants, the one we're approving tonight and Haldane's, put them together, and you have the total taxes for both communities, and you apportion the total to all those things, and I can calculate out what the rate will be. And it will be a significant increase
Can I ask
for the Garrison residents.
But how
One
much
other
do we have
question.
to pay for that?
One other question on that. Is there any flexibility on timing of the tax rate increase? Is it something that can be scheduled over, you know, a particular period of time, or would it be immediate?
It would be immediate when they were
merger?
merged together, yes.
You know, but when we were with the lawyer, you know, there's state ed support. He suggested for districts that merge, annex, consolidate for years. And I wonder if that's to assist with that burden or what? No.
It's to assist with the costs of consolidating, you know, assets and operations. I mean, so it's to assist with that. So there's additional aid, but the aid, the hurdles that we have with aid is the state knows that this district doesn't need aid because it has a very wealthy population that doesn't pay very much in taxes. So they're not going to give a lot of aid to Garrison.
Would a feasibility study potentially tell us how much aid we get and plus how they like to be really good.
I think it would, but I think, you know, the real, you know, where the rubber meets the road discussion is, you know, if there was so much difficulty to package a 10% tax increase, or package a 50% or 60% tax increase, is not very likely.
Didn't we walk away from that meeting in July with the attorney basically all of us agreeing that this just
No, I
isn't
didn't
going to
either.
happen?
I did not.
Okay.
feel
My impression from that meeting was A, we don't think Holiday Public would be interested in this merger. B, there's no way we're going to be able to get our community to vote for a 50% tax increase. So that's probably not a very productive use of time to spend time or money on trying to figure out whether we can do this.
We
So that was
don't have
my,
any information. That's why I think the idea is that we're not supporting annexation, consolidation, merger. I am in favor of a feasibility study to give us information that I don't have.
So the only thing what I want to add to that though is, and I think there's a valid point to gathering more information rather than speculating, going off of maybe even a study that was done 15 years ago, what we think. But even if, so I think there's a lot of steps to go that could or should happen before even talking about a feasibility study, including, we don't even know how much feasibility study costs. Given the fact that we don't have a whole lot of extra money to play around with. But if we were to go forward with that, how they were to join us, that it does send a signal. It sends an intent that we're thinking about annexation. So also to back up, to remind everybody, when we talked with the lawyer in July, and please help fill in the details because I don't remember, he explained to us that consolidation was not really an option for our district. I think it's because the two districts are so different. And what we were really talking about is annexation, which is basically a dissolution of the Garrison district. And we become absorbed. We become Haldane.
No, he actually said we will become part of that official district, but it will no longer have to remain called Haldane, right? It's like, it's a new district is actually the point.
Oh,
It's what he said,
So,
it's what the lawyer said.
But still they, as the larger district, they are absorbing us. They would retain, our teachers would lose their security, their tenure, their job, and simply showing that.
Only if we don't need the teacher. Like, I mean, that's the point of the
Oh,
study.
no, but I'm saying,
No.
if we were to, so let's say, as a board, we want to go forward with this to find out more information, but we're not actually planning on doing this annexation or thinking it's a good idea. But by moving forward, it is sending a signal to some of our teachers that this could happen in the future, and they may start sending out their resumes.
By
We
not
may
doing a
lose
study, we send the signal that we are all against it, which may be the case for most of them. My point is, by not doing a feasibility study, by saying we will not do a study, we're sending a message, we will not do a study. Like, I really think that the study is just a step to understand how many teachers, how many faculty would we need, right? To support the
Well,
students that are here.
So,
And I-
President Johnson, I feel like if we were just doing a study of our own district to look at things, but it's not just of us, right?
Of course,
It's not
of course.
just,
It's both.
and it's not
That's
just
the point.
us, it's not, I think, it's not just us agreeing that it's something that the feasibility should be done, that it has to be agreed on by two boards.
But
I
I think that that's
I
a good
think the
point.
first step, well, no, it's not a moot point because.
No, good, like,
Right,
we
so-
just need what is Haldane think?
Well,
right now,
but
what do
also,
we
we
think?
don't even know what we think.
Well, that's
And
what we're trying to
I
say.
You're
would
making a
attend,
motion
I
to have a
thought
study?
at the retreat, we thought that it
No,
wasn't
I'm not
something we
doing that
wanted to do.
I think I think my takeaway from the retreat was that it's unlikely that the community is going to support
Based on our personal
a
opinions.
50%, yeah, based on our.
And
personal
also,
opinions,
if you
based
look
on a
back,
50%
what
tax
was done
increase.
10 years.
But,
pragmatic.
but also,
we're never
that
going to pass a
We don't have
50%
that
But-
tax.
but I think the issue is not, we don't have to make,
Hold on, let's try to just let everybody talk one at a time so we can all, yeah, no, I'm not using a gavel. Just so we can all hear each other.
I just, you know,
Don't you dare.
if there's no significant financial outlay for us just to conduct a feasibility study, I don't see any harm in doing that. I don't think it sends, I wouldn't be that concerned about the message it sends. We don't know what the outcome of a feasibility or annexation would be at this point. It's all speculation. You know, and at the end of the day, there's clearly interest in the community about this issue. I think as a board, we can help address just people's questions, not a desire to annex or merge or consolidate, but just to know how that process would unfold, how the tax, you know, question would be resolved. But also, you know, from my perspective, we clearly have a budgetary issue that needs to be addressed in the coming years. You know, I think if we put all of these things on the table and say, well, look, we do have a significant budgetary problem. One way to address that would be to pursue annexation, which would result in a 50% increase in our taxes, but that doesn't have to be the only way. There are other ways we could address this that wouldn't result in such a drastic thing. I think that sends a message as well about, you know, the seriousness with which we take the budgetary situation, the fact that we are looking at it from different angles, and that there might be ways to address our budgetary situation that doesn't result in a 50% tax increase. So I think there could be a lot of benefits to pursuing just the feasibility study. I'm not saying I support annexation or consolidation, but I don't, you know, I feel like we're speculating a lot about what the effects would be without knowing for sure. But I also think it'd be very helpful, Joe, just to have it in writing somewhere that this would be the tax increase and that it would happen right away, because that's one thing that I've heard from community members about how quickly would this go into effect.
I have another request. I know it's a feasibility study that has monetary costs, but I also want to know how many hours of time have to be put in by the various staff members at the school and the board in looking into it, because we might, you know, depending on other things that are going on in the district, if they say, oh, it's, you know, 100 hours over superintendent's time, that might be something that we might not think the timing
Yeah,
right
definitely.
now with our budget constraints and other things that are happening.
Totally agree. Unless it's just.
Unless it shows time, then they can have 200 hours.
I mean, I wrote just quickly at the retreat that the lawyer said, once we engage SED in the process, they'll nearly take control of it at this point. That's what he said.
Right, but they do meet, like, there's lots of meetings.
But what I'm
there's
saying,
lots of-
yeah, I
right.
agree, but
They,
I think
I don't know how
we just
much.
don't know.
well, I know this, they need information, right? So whoever, whether it's state ed or someone, you know, an expert coming in doing a feasibility study. But here's what we can do for the board. A, we already talked about Joe looking at the tax impact. B, I can easily work with Phil Benante and look at positions and which could be excess.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, you know, basically your central office, every position there, you could probably make do with one. However, again, I think it's important for everyone to understand under an annexation model, what I'm reading and what I recall from Pat is that Haldane staffing has priority. So that is a consideration, because I do think I think you need to know as a board, if you start taking these steps, and we have to talk about this publicly. And if you talk about, well, there are 10 positions that can be accessed, and if that means there's going to be 10 Garrison employees, not just teachers, but
But we don't know 10
administrators.
yet, right?
If I had to, I'm fairly familiar with how
We're
they.
throwing 50 and 10 around, and I don't know if those are real.
No, what I can say is there's at least
Mhm.
8 to 10 positions that I believe could be accessed. They would all be Garrison. If you move forward, it wouldn't be, if I didn't say this clearly to you, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
Those 8 to 10 people, they will know who they are. It doesn't take, it's easy to figure out who potentially could lose their job. They would start looking immediately, because jobs also, you know, We have a lot of really competent people here. We had one person go to a very prestigious district last year after attending, a budget meeting. Resume went out the next day. We believe we replaced her with a really competent person, so we're fortunate. But I can't tell you, I was concerned about that. There could be 8 people who believe they need to start exploring options because they don't know how this will play out. Yes, it is only the first step, and I understand the objectives. What I'm hearing here is we just want information. It's not that we, based on the information, we may or may not support moving forward, but you have to know taking that first step, and it is something that you need to do publicly. It could trigger more fear amongst some key employees. And I can talk to Phil in an hour and probably have you a list. And I'm pretty confident that list is going to be between 8 and 10 people.
I appreciate you saying that. It's a concern for all of us. And I think what's really daunting for us as a board is that not only a discussion of this raises fear for our staff and faculty, but also our budget. And that one we can't escape. So no matter what we talk about, we are scaring people. And it's just something for us to really, or at least that's the message I'm getting from you, is that our faculty and staff are scared by a budget conversation, but could also be scared by this conversation. And I think that that's worrisome for us as a board to consider how do we help them? Like,
My 2 cents would be that if we're gonna scare people, talk about real things, let's focus on things that are actually likely to happen. This feels like to me to be, even if we do a feasibility study, the chances of this happening are really low. So let's focus on what we actually can do. Let's focus on our budget, focus on the things that are in our control. Feasibility study, it costs us a dime of more. It costs Carl an hour of time and probably more. That's just my personal feeling. I just don't think it's worth the time and effort based on what we know.
I think it would be helpful to just know what we do know and what open questions are. So along the lines of what the tax picture would look like, whether or not it could be reimbursed if we did it, if we know if Haldane would explore it. I mean, just not even, basically feasibility of a feasibility, just to make a decision about whether or not a feasibility study is worth pursuing.
Right, that's,
And I'd like to know what is really involved in feasibility.
because I don't think we have a copy of one to know what it takes, right? Or did you say, we don't
I
have a
mean,
copy of it?
I've read copies of other districts, they're
Right.
online, and they seem very comprehensive with many meetings of many community
Yeah.
members,
A lot of focus groups.
a lot of focus groups, a lot of work.
So I had breakfast this morning, a former board member was telling me about people in the community who want consolidation and nice breakfast. And then I heard on the television several hours later that the executive leadership of this Wagner group, in Russia, was blown out of the sky apparently by a Putin missile, right? That immediately made me think that, well, maybe what we should do is to pass a motion that Allison and Carl always ride in separate planes.
I think maybe don't you know?
I worked for a company that was a requirement for, the management staff. We couldn't take
Yeah.
planes together.
No, the real thing.
so it sounds like,
They gotta be on the fly.
Nobody wanted that motion.
I like that. So this is clearly a bigger discussion, that we need to keep having. We need, the next steps are gathering some information, a rough, tax analysis, potential number of staff elimination, and what that looks like basically in payroll, that Carl can discuss with Bill Benante, and the cost and the details of feasibility study. And then we can come back together and have a few more details to discuss. And the other, what's not being said there is also, whether even Haldane wants to discuss this, because once Haldane says no, that's done. There's,
If I could just add one other thought, it probably makes more sense for Garrison. Before you go to the Haldane board to decide, does this board want to move forward? Because again, when you look at the tax impact, I believe Garrison taxes will increase significantly. Haldane's taxes may decrease slightly. So it's advantageous for them, just from a tax perspective, just a narrow perspective, but that is important. And I think, first Garrison ought to make sure that it's something they'd like to explore. And if that's the case, and again, Phil offered at any time, we could send liaisons to have those conversations.
I haven't heard one person say, identify one benefit the Garrison community would get from annexation or consolidation. And we've been talking about this for 20 minutes now. I managed to bring in the Wagner group. I still haven't heard one reason why we would want to consider this.
That's why I want a feasibility study. Is there anything good about this? I have no idea. People keep talking about it. Why?
Because I think it's a Hail Mary to fix our problem with funding the school.
So then can't the feasibility study potentially give us, shed light on that? The only thing I wonder. I have no idea.
It could, if merging this with Haldane could fix our school, because it would then raise our taxes to the level of Haldane's. But that doesn't, it's just a Hail Mary. It's not, you have to pass that with the voters. And at the end of the day, they don't want to pass an override of 10% 2 years ago. They're not going to pass a significantly higher one. David's right. It doesn't, I don't think, stepping away from the financial piece of it, does the Garrison community want to give up the identity of the Garrison school? Do we want to lose that identity?
I don't know. I just don't think we can assume the answer before we know what the actual outcome would be. I mean, we have a pretty good idea, but if we could just point to, a hard number that says this is what would happen and this is when it would happen, even without the feasibility study, and I'm not sure we need a feasibility study, but if we could get, because people are asking those questions in the community, and there's a contingent of people, I think we'll continue to ask it until we have a concrete response that says, if we do this, we would, well, number one, Haldane would do it, if that's the answer. Number two, our taxes as of next school year would increase to this rate. End of story. And then that maybe ends the discussion. But at least if we have that number and any other information that might be necessary, then we can go back to the community with that.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to I don't want to waste a lot of time on this, because I feel like this is a few people that are frustrated about our financial situation and trying to figure out.
Yeah, but I do think it's a potential, I'm not saying I support it, but I think that the benefit, if you were to think about it in that way, and I'm not saying a 50% tax increase is a benefit, but the problem that I think people are trying to address is the year-to-year budget issue, which, I think is going to require a lot of conversation in the community and rallying people for a significant, potentially, revenue increase. And the benefit would be that, at least from Garrison's perspective, we result in, I think, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, or if we're just dividing the same small pot of money, but that it would result in more funding for Garrison students for education. And potentially unlocking state aid, given the change in the demographic of the district.
The aid ratio would definitely change, but whether or not that would really unlock significant more funding for the Garrison students, I'm not really sure.
Right, we don't know.
It wouldn't be within this board's control. That's for sure.
Well, no, maybe not, but I mean,
That's-
that's,
But no, I hear your points. I feel like this is a pretty theoretical conversation. It's not based in a lot of actual action that's going to happen.
I just, don't want to keep laboring, but I just think just having a couple hard facts that we could point to, so that as we enter a year of budget conversations, we can either say this is not a feasible option at all because this is what would happen, or maybe we should continue to explore it because we have to consider other options in order to address the budgetary situation.
I do think, as David shared in the answer, we need to know why we're doing it. Just to do a feasibility study for the sake of doing it We really need to know our why and what are we looking for, because maybe we're not looking for a feasibility study at all. Maybe we're looking to see if there are some other ways to do shared services to save us money, which is a whole different conversation.
Well, I would ask Joe, James, Allison, and I, all the focus is on having a smooth opening right after Labor Day, and just getting settled. Joe does have a new transportation model to present to the board and roll it out to the community tomorrow. So as soon as we get past that, we will focus on gathering some data for the board. We'll come back to you. Probably won't be the first September meeting, probably be that second September. But we'll follow up.
And I was going to say, I support Dan's point that either way, because I'm not saying that 50% tax increase would be a benefit. I'll sign that.
And I think we can all support additional educational funding.
So let's move on to the next item that has already come up briefly from our summer board retreat is the creation of the Budget Advisory Committee and committee charge. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review that. We discussed it in July. Jen, you're chair of this future committee. Would you like to lead off the discussion of this? Not to put you on the spot, or does anybody have any comments, I should say, of, I guess the big thing we discussed in July was whether to call it liaison or advisory.
Right, I have felt that maybe it shouldn't be called budget advisory. We didn't come up with another.
It was liaison.
Was
So it was
liaison.
more
We-
about
yeah.
outreach to the community.
Right,
One concern was using the word like liaison. It might empower people to, as if it was a give and take, and that they were charged with going out to the community to distribute information. Whereas advisory, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's they're there to learn, to listen, to share.
to advise, and that's
To
what I
advise.
wanted to get away from, because my understanding of what we wanted the committee to do was not to advise on how the budget should be built, but to communicate about the budget with the community and how it was built.
And I'm going to be honest with you, I left the board meeting liking the idea of changing the name to liaison, but as I made my way home, it occurred to me, liaison does give this idea of two-way communication. And I think that could be problematic when you're dealing with budget facts. I think the source ought to be the district, because we know we are putting out accurate information. We did talk about this committee would go through a training and an education on the budget process, so everyone has a basis of information. But I think if there is this expectation for two-way communication, it could be problematic if someone just misunderstands or not deliberately, but even just innocently starts, talking about the budget in an inaccurate way. I think it could be problematic. They would be looked at as a reliable source because they are officially on a budget liaison committee, but if they're not giving accurate information, that's just a concern I have. In almost every district, in my experience, it is always advisory to the board. This is like a subcommittee that advises the board, and it is clearly stated at the end, can accept, the recommendations or does not have to, but just some thoughts. And Joe, I don't know if in your experience as well.
What about budget outreach committee?
That sounds like it sounds like their goal is to stand at the train station platform and hand out flyers saying this is what the Garrison school budget is doing. And again, possibilities of misinformation being construed.
So can I just be clear, do we want the committee to be educating or communicating with the community about what information we had. But that's what we discussed at the board retreat was that's what we wanted. At least that's how I remember it, which is why we changed it to liaison. But the other way you're talking about it is you'd rather the committee is kind of really just bouncing off of the board and the administration on the budget.
That was my understanding too, that the
Right.
goal was to go out and speak with the community to gain their perspective on
But also to
the
serve as
budget, but also to serve
source
as a
of information.
communication.
I think listening is one thing.
Right.
So listening and bringing back, your
We have the
constituents, your
chart.
circle.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I'll send a link.
Yeah, it's shared with everyone.
I share.
Just now.
No, you guys, there's
We all
lots of
have it.
comments on it,
Yeah.
already from the board members, but I did share it.
To go into your drive, right?
Yeah, and if you just do a search, Jen, at Budget Advisory Committee charge, it should pop up for you. Yeah. Let me know if you.
The concern would be if committee member, any individual committee member is viewed as, an authority on budget, because they're not. You could have to manage some misinformation of someone, again, maybe it's not deliberate, just not having a full understanding, going out and presenting information on our behalf. I think everyone should get their information directly from the district. Certainly, these people ought to be listening and bringing ideas from their constituents.
But it
That is
does,
a good
it
thing.
does say in the charge, developing budget recommendations that align with the district's strategic goal. Maybe we should remove that.
Isn't it? I don't know, but I want to hear recommendations. I want to hear suggestions from members of the community. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the best suggestions, because then it would, then it would go through the finance committee, and certainly Joe's office.
Well, just the process of them bringing suggestions and having a two-way conversation between the district and the rest of the committee does two things. It says that we're interested in hearing what you have as far as a suggestion, and it also gives us an opportunity to say whether or not those kind of suggestions work within the rules and parameters that we're allowed to do. Because I think part of the thing that's challenge is not too many people are really paying attention to all the presentations that we have, and they don't necessarily understand what goes into a school budget. And so this is just an opportunity to get a different set of people involved with how we develop a budget and how we develop recommendations to go into the budget. So potentially even people that are maybe not interested in supporting the district, they understand at least what the parameters and the constraints are that we are under, so that when they talk to their friends, there could be more knowledgeable discussions than there are currently. So I think that's a part of it. So we do want input from the public as to how we manage the funds, because it's their funds that we're managing on their behalf to educate the students there, right? So we have a responsibility to them to manage that effectively and deliver the best education program that we can do. All the requirements for supporting. So we do want input from them, but we also want the opportunity to talk to them about how we develop a budget and what makes a budget that is conforming to what the rules are that are required and meets the needs for the students that are here.
So if that's the case, I would make two suggestions to the charge. The last bullet, a commitment by the committee to further educate and inform the Garrison Unified School District community regarding the budget planning process and fiscal challenges. I wonder if it's more of a commitment by the committee to further educate the community about the adopted budget.
We don't adopt it.
Except I think we were planning on, this committee was gonna meet in the fall to make
Okay.
recommendations, and then Joe begins the budget process
Process.
in June, presenting it to the.
But then wouldn't you want this committee who made recommendations to then go out and educate about the budget?
No, we'd
No?
want, well, to the extent that
This is
they
gonna
would
have community
remind people
members.
in the community if they want to know more about the budget. These are the meetings that are coming up. I
Okay.
think as far as if there's people that are not on the committee that want to know more about the budget, they should come to the board meetings and see the presentations and all the forums and things that we do, I think is,
So then it should be maybe planning process opportunities to attend board meetings. Right, we should be specific. And then I also think we should have we have the school business official / district treasurer, faculty staff. I think we should have numbers. I don't want to end up with 20 faculty staff members and 10 community members. Like, I think we should limit it to a certain number.
I put that in there. We should spell out what the committee makeup is.
Well, let's, we know what our faculty can give. Do we think it's 2 people maybe? But then we could then have 2 communities. Yeah, whatever we think.
Two at most.
Yeah.
You know, they're pretty stretched.
Right.
We could say up to 2.
Up to two.
And then same for community. You think
For
up to 2?
community. I might even say up to 3. We go to our saying maximum 3, yeah, but up to 3.
Yeah.
And we say,
That definitely makes it easier if we get an influx of interest to be able to say, well, we have to limit it, right?
On the board charge, I think one general suggestion would be to strike some of the language that makes it seem like they're going to be performing a sort of in-depth financial assessment or reviewing specific, numbers. I think they should be educated about the process so they can go out to the community. But to me, the real value is for them to meet with, a number of different segments of the community. I think sort of the common, retirees, people without kids in the district, people with kid parents, et cetera, and hear from them about their concerns about, taxes and finance, and let's collect that feedback, bring it back to us, and they can make recommendations, based on those sort of listening sessions that they're doing, and then, hopefully engage the community more in the process, get the word out that it's happening, and then by the time budget comes around, people feel like they've played a bigger role.
right, but I see in you there's a suggestion to possibly strike, receive, and examine fund balance projections. That's a very important part of the budget.
It's an important part of the budget, but I don't know if do they need that to be for the budget advisory committee? Obviously, that's a board role.
I mean, I would think if you're going to be looking to make recommendations about the budget, one of the concerns that have been raised here is that we're using fund balance to balance the budget. So if you don't know what those projections are,
And I
I
just
just
throw
say
in
though
that,
that we wouldn't have that the committee wouldn't have that information. Because you're right, it is important, but we also don't have the final numbers, till Joe has the final numbers, so it might make sense to remove it from the charge so that we're not locked in.
or what maybe right add when available. I don't know that we have to analyze them, but we would need to receive them, because if we look at the past, that was millions of dollars, and it could change significantly suggestions that come from the public.
I mean, I think educating the committee, I would lean towards giving them more information, educating them. I think that they'll just be more effective as an advisory committee if they have good information. So Joe and I even talked a little bit, just, about, the early meetings, really focusing on education.
Yeah.
I've also served on advisory committees where they look at one aspect of the budget, just maybe how can we generate more revenue? We have a few tuition students, but they don't have to look at globally, like they may decide, but maybe we give them that ability to, do they want to focus on a particular area or take a broader look at our budget and make recommendations.
I think the charge for, what's the overall framework of the budget is still gonna come from the finance committee. So the finance committee sets the overall tone as to, what are we trying to do with this year's budget? Are we trying to, maintain all program regardless of cost? Are we trying to stay within the tax cap? Are we trying to do, what are the overarching goals, right? So the finance committee sets those, and that's part of the framework. This budget advisory committee can feed into what those goals are. Some of the pieces that are used to develop it. We can get recommendations from the advisory committee that when we choose to use, and we can not to. But I think a big part of that advisory committee is hearing what the public has to say, and then talking about whether or not those things that they're saying fit into what we do based on the parameters that we have to work. So it's a educational component, and it's a transparency component that is out there so that the public knows a little bit more about what it is that we do in order to develop the budget, and also a vehicle to say, okay, if you're concerned about the budget and you want to know more, they do presentations on the budget from February until May. Come out and come to the forums and ask the questions that you want to ask.
The other thing is serving on this committee, you can have more informal conversations. When we're going through our budget process, they're formal presentations. They're here in this setting. You're on camera. It's being recorded, and people may be reluctant to really say what's on their mind. In this setting, I think people will be comfortable to have open conversations about what their opinions are, and I think that's helpful for our community to be able to have a place to do that. Yeah.
So with this, are we just reviewing this now, or was our goal to ratify this tonight, or is this where we stand with this?
I think you have a bit more time, but not that much more time, because we will have the auditor's report, Joe, by October.
Yeah, well, we'll have it at the end of September, and the first October meeting is when the board would accept the audit report and get the public presentation.
So convening this committee, my judgment, Joe.
Maybe sometime in October would probably be the first.
October, the latest November. So I do think that a few more meetings, and it'll take a little more time to process. And
I don't feel like we're in a place where we all feel like, we're ready to go on this thing. I feel like it might be productive to at least go to the next meeting, everyone have more time to go back and look. I feel like we all looked at it probably in mid-July, and then we haven't had since tonight.
And I also just want to be clear, my understanding was not that it was the job of the committee to be out there educating the community about everything, but rather doing kind of a listening tour and coming back to the board before January to say, this is what we heard. And these are just some considerations. And yes, to pepper that with some information about, the budget, but to be more of a listening tour of what are some of the things you'd like to see in the budget? What are some of the things that you're concerned about? What are some of your hopes and dreams for the future that the budget might be able to support in alignment with our mission, vision, and our goals?
One question, just so are we being asked to revise the charge? Are we all sort of taking a hand at revising or offering, because there are comments in here, but we haven't really updated it so much. So what's, I guess, just the process of that?
What might be helpful, Joe, I know Dusty, you did a great job. I know you looked at some other districts, but Joe and I know some districts that their financial departments are running really well. Maybe we can look at their just for models, to give you a bit more information so you can see what, and Joe and I, through our network, I think we could pinpoint those districts that we believe are doing really well in this area. Look at how their advisory committees function. Doesn't mean, we need to adopt that, but
Right, but we
give
could
you a little
also,
more
we could also
information.
get a, we could revise the existing one a little bit and send it back out for you to look at. Once we've done that.
I feel like it's just sort of a matter of mostly just semantics capturing what Jen, you said about the sort of listening to her and that it's not the finance committee and stuff like that.
But feel free, I know this was fresh in your mind, later this week, if you want to add some comments in there, and Joe and I will work on getting some of the comments. Circle back.
Can this go back on the agenda for the next meeting? Great, thanks. So now what we've all been waiting for, the new transportation model. Did I skip something?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
But this will be quick.
Okay.
Yeah, you can stay up there.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
get some.
see, I jumped ahead. Okay, discussion and approval of 2023-2024 board operational guidelines. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adopts the board operational guidelines for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. Can I have a motion?
Second.
It is in your packet. I believe we
No changes, right?
no changes
Yeah.
to this. We reviewed this at our retreat. All right, can I move to, can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions. Really need to think about those words. Okay, sorry for the delay. Now we are on to the new transportation law. Yeah.
So while Joe is getting that software up on the screen, I need to just recognize that for the past month, Joe has worked very, very hard to learn how to use TransFinder, our new software system, our routing system. It's pretty impressive with what it can do. Joe has spent many, many long hours. Fortunately, we can provide transportation to every student, K through 12, even those that live within 2 miles from the district, because there was some concern over that last year. So all students have safe transportation. They never have to cross over a major thoroughfare, 9D, 9, 403. They'll be picked up where their home is. There is some extended bus times. There are some added community bus stops. There's one particular bus that start about 30 minutes earlier compared to last year. So there were some sacrifices to make this work, but everyone has safe transportation. We do, and the other thing Joe did was he made sure every single student has a seat on the bus. We know, based on history, that somewhere between 20, 25%, maybe 30% of our students don't regularly ride the buses. So what he shows you this evening, as we settle into the school year, will only get better as far as, maybe more efficiency with time. We may be able to tweak those times, and there'll be some vacant seats on the bus. This creates a little more space and won't be so crowded.
Bill, did you have fun playing doing?
Oh, once you get it in it, it actually starts doing what you want.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
We're gonna throw them a quiz later where you shout out any address in Garrison. And Joe will be able to tell you what time the bus stops at that house.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the high school runs and just talk about the high school runs a little bit, and then we'll get into the other ones. So, I think the first thing to kind of realize is, you are going to 3 different high schools, and what we want to recognize is the 3 different high schools. Now we've added the third one. Third one starts earlier than all the rest. So that's part of the calculation. And the other part that goes along with that is the folks that have selected that high school are at opposite ends of the district. So knowing that this is going to be a choice that's going to continue into the future, this is done in a way that we collect all the high school students. They come back to Garrison, just like they have done in the past. And then 3 different buses go to the 3 different high schools. And then 1 bus starts doing an elementary run. So that's the big difference. So go ahead.
Doesn't Putnam Valley start later than the other day?
Earlier.
Does that change? I feel like last year we discussed this was like a leg and com. It's like
Yeah, it's 7:10. Their first meeting. So they're earlier. So in order for us to make that work, what we have to do is we have to have the consolidation done, and the buses have to leave here at 6:40 instead of 6:50. So that moves the clock up earlier in time. So you essentially have three large buses, and let me just see if I can get the scrolling to the side here to match what I need. There's a scroll bar. All right. Yes.
Can you watch screen that?
I can get through all of them.
Yeah, that's not it.
So the small bus is in the blue color. And the 3 large buses are orange, red, and pink. And you can see the pink one does the bottom section of the district, and the red one goes over to Dennytown Road. And if you know anything about what's along Dennytown Road, is you basically have to go down Dennytown Road, turn around, come back, because you can't really go across the district anywhere up there, and that's just a constraint. So so the routes are done in such a way that we are limiting the amount of backtracking and stuff that we do, and we try to even out amongst the buses. And then these you can see by the times that they're all ending around between 6:30 and 6:35. So that there would be 5 minutes time for the kids to get off the bus at Garrison, get on whatever bus they need to be, and go to their next day.
Does the 5:55 mean that's the first?
Yes. Or that actually means that's when it leaves the yard here.
Or the yard.
Yeah. So that's the routes. It's maybe 10 minutes earlier than in the past, but the high school story isn't very significant as far as a change. You're moving up 10 minutes further in time, and you still have the same kind of constraints. Are there any questions on the high school stuff? At least for the morning.
Is this the first time you're using Transponder?
Yes.
Well, congratulations. It's an impressive amount of work. Having used this, brought the software into the district.
Yeah, we felt like, in the past, what has been done for the transportation runs is you take the run from last year, the list, and you take the 8th graders off and put the new kindergartners on, and just use the same stuff. And we didn't think that we could do that and redo how we're doing things. So we needed something to do that. Now that's part of the reason for purchasing the software. Was for that.
Are these all Orange County or is it van?
They're all Orange County. The vans that we're going to use for us are going to do some of the special education runs to Inhut. So we're going to have a couple that go to Inhut that are ours, but the rest is all. This is the elementary runs, the elementary morning run. And what you see is the Aqua bus starts at Hutt Valley. The orange bus at the top starts at Haldane. And pink, it doesn't map all the way over across the river. Oops. I had to scroll, but that's not exactly how I want it to go. Yes, I understand how it's working. Okay. Making you all dizzy right now. Okay, so the pink one doesn't map all the way across the river, but the first stop that it stops is down at the Manitou Road at the bottom there by the bridge, and it starts picking up students along Route 9, and then it goes down, goes across 301, and then it goes down south on another part of actually 9D first, and then it goes down.
Can you move that a little bit or hide in the start time?
Yeah.
Figure it out. No one wants to see it first. Not that pretty.
Okay, so yeah, the start times are tough. They're the toughest on the red route. And the reason why that is the case is in order to pick up all of the students in time to have them here when school starts and drive to the 3 schools, the bus that's not doing that has to start picking up students. And what it does is it starts picking up students with the view. Okay, so the red route is mostly shown on that view there. So the earliest stops are northbound on Route 9D. So we leave Garrison on the red route. We start picking up students along northbound on Route 9D. We go across and go over to Dennytown Road. Go down Dennytown Road. You do a U-turn. You come back. And this is the way we've been doing it for years because that's really the only way you can go. Right. So you go down Dennytown Road. You do a U-turn to come back. You go down Route 9, and then you go Old Albany Road, and you get all those stops, and you come over, and you come across State Hill Road, and then you terminate in Garrison. So this one is the longest route that we have, is that one elementary run. In the afternoon, we don't do the exact same thing because the starting points are different. So the other thing that's different about this year is if you're on that run in the morning, you may or may not be on that run in the afternoon, because what we don't want we wanted to have students on the bus as the least amount possible. If we're all starting out of Garrison, you know, there's some shifting going around. So what happens in the afternoon is the B run and the A run, some of the kids shuffle.
Like 5 kids or 20 kids, you know?
Yeah, so it's in A, in the morning, you have 56 students on A. Now, this is if everyone would attend, which doesn't happen. So in the past, we could have routed as many as 70 kids to a bus. But that doesn't mean that 70 kids ride the bus, because, well, one, they can't. But two, there is a high percentage of students that actually get driven here. So we route everyone. Everyone has a stop. Everyone has the ability to get on a bus, but not everybody does. Okay. So that bus is the longest route, and then the B and the C are the other long routes. One starts at Haldane, the other one starts at Island Falls, and then the D route, which is a van, a smaller vehicle, picks up some spots where, you know, we didn't want the larger bus to backtrack, and also some special education students that need aid. That's going to be an aid that we have from the district. So that's the philosophy. That one is listed at 71 minutes. In the afternoon, it's less. Pull that one up. So in the afternoon, that run is 58 minutes, whereas, you know, you have 42, 44, and 37 for the other ones. And that's what it estimates out to be. If it stops at all the stops, then all the kids ride. We anticipate it would shrink somewhat. And we have the ability to print out route sheets that the bus drivers can check off to say, okay, these are the kids that rode Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we can get an idea on how that is. And if it's possible to tighten the times a bit, we will. We have bus lists of all the children that are all at all stops. If I click on stops, I can, you know, show which ones they are. But obviously, we wouldn't do that in a public setting. But, you know, you have 50 students on orange, 68 on pink, 64 on red one, and 13 on the small one. Plus, there's an 8-year-old. So the overarching goals are: we're not driving down private roads. We're not driving on roads we didn't drive on last year. And there are certain parts of roads that we don't go on. And they're indicated in part by the red rectangles and shapes that you see on there to prevent the software from trying to route down roads you can't drive down. So we took a list of routes and roads that kind of been institutional knowledge for years, and made it so that when the software tried to optimize things, it wouldn't try to drive across roads it couldn't go. So
So how are you communicating it with tomorrow? What's the-
Good question. Joe and I, have a draft, cover letter for parents. We will be sending them bus routes. We're not going to post them on the website. Instead, we're going to put them into the parent portal. So what we learned is that the two systems are compatible. So it's new to us. It's the first time, so we may not have them in the parent portal until Monday. But they'll be able to see the routes. We'll know their bus stop, but they'll be able to confirm that when they go into the portal and see their child's specific bus stop.
So we're gonna make the routes public tomorrow, and as soon as we're able to get all the stuff into the other systems that communicate through parent portal, we'll be able to communicate the individual routes. I imagine, in a lot of ways, people will be able to tell what their stops are by, where they are and what the stops that are listed here. They'll know. The other difference that we have versus last year, some roads that we might have gone and made a loop around in a development and came back out and stopped at their house, and then the next time we didn't necessarily do that. We stopped at a nearby intersection and stopped there. But we don't have any students crossing any of the major roads. And that would be Snake Hill and 403, 9 and 9D. They don't cross. We pick up on either side. And the other thing that's not necessarily shown here on the high school routes is if you are on the way to the high school, whether it's O'Neill or Haldane, and you or you're on the way home, like we will drop you off before we get to Garrison if you're right on that road. But that doesn't, they're not necessarily routed, but we know to pick them up on the way. So like if you are north on 9D and you go to Haldane, we'll pick you up after we do the consolidation. We'll give them a different time.
Because this is all new, am I correct that you named the buses by letters now rather than their former colors?
Yeah, we don't want to use colors because we don't want people to think that, oh, I was on no, we don't want to do that because you may or may not be on the same bus in the morning as you are in the afternoon. And we think that there's a lot of things that are different. So we didn't want to confuse colors, and that's why we did A, B, C, D, just to make it not colors.
And in terms of communication, there's also going to be a survey or a questionnaire sent out for people to give information about. I know we have to provide transportation for every student, but as we know, there are a number of folks that will never ride the bus, that only ride the bus in the morning. So parents will be able to communicate that to help you fine tune this.
We're, it's a discussion. I don't know if at this point it necessarily matters. We could also just print out the run sheets and have people check off, who actually gets on the bus.
We went back and forth, Courtney. What I think we definitely want to do is have our drivers give us actual ridership, the first few weeks of school. Because what Joe pointed out to me, even if we heard from parents that, I'll never use the bus. Well, things change. and we wouldn't want to make a major shift to the routes, or a new family could move in with a child who needs the bus, in that neighborhood. So although we may refine this, and if we can make it a little better, we will. Based on what Joe is informing me, I don't think these routes will change dramatically. Times may be a little faster. There may be a little more room where it's not 2 or even 3 to a seat. But I think doing that. And then here at school, we parents let us know as far as, early dismiss, or if they're picking up or taking them, as we do collect that information. So a survey may not help us all that much between now and the opening.
Other questions for Joe? Thank you. This was a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
So thank you for all of your time and detail. And yes, I'm going to quiz you at some point randomly in the hallway about a specific address.
Well, I think, we've got a system here that can work and can do what we need. And it'll be interesting to see, how the time compresses, once we get the ridership. I think we will likely have a lot of the same players from Orange County who are familiar with Garrison and what Garrison transportation is about. So, while I believe there are going to be challenges, I think we're in a good place as far as I think this route will work and do what we need.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. It's public comment time. Do I have to read the paragraph? Okay, great. Given it's 8:55. Okay, moving on to acceptance of minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the annual reorganizational meeting of July 12th, 2023, the minutes of the regular business meeting of July 12th, 2023, and the minutes of the special meeting of July 15th, 2023, as presented. May I have a motion? Thank you. Seconded? Second. Any questions, comments? All right, let's move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Nays? Okay. Moving on to accept claims audit report. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the 2023 claims audit report as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
I just wanted to comment that, it's a very nice report.
Well, this is our new claims auditor, so I will definitely pass that along to her. It's Kathy Clark also is our claims auditor now. This is, the first report.
Let's move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Personnel items. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. Can I have a motion?
I have a question first. What's the difference between a certified and not certified? So,
David, we hire both. Certified means they have teaching certification. If they do not, sometimes we will use them to fill in for a paraprofessional or a monitor. And also, if you don't have your teaching certification, you are allowed to teach, to substitute teach for 40 days. So if they have, for example, a bachelor's degree and we think they are able to handle covering a class, occasionally we will have them do that. We always try certified subs first.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Seconded. Is there anything else you want to speak to here? This covers
Yeah, these,
everything, right?
this is all the final staffing to open up the school year. Probably one of the more significant hires, and it took us some time. Sean Ramsey is going to be our new maintenance worker, bus driver, pending board approval. Brian Bruning, you may recall, retired at the end of the school year. It took some time, but we're glad we were very thoughtful in the interview process and patient. This guy he worked on building, the Tappan Zee Bridge for 7 years. He also worked in a school taking care of the grounds. He's got carpentry, plumbing, just a wide range of skills, and we think he's a perfect addition to the facilities team. So Joe led the search process. Joe, thank you for your hard work on this, because I think we've found a good fit for our team. Then there's just some substitutes that'll be needed. I should point out also, we're grateful, thank you. We have a number of 8th grade parent volunteers that are helping with Pizza Fridays, which is our fundraiser for the 8th grade class. They're going to help us distribute. They're on a rotation. They'll help Mrs. Clark facilitate giving out pizza to the students.
I did have a question about those volunteers. Are they trained in your lockdown, lockout, fire drill procedures?
Before they are starting Pizza Fridays, we are going to do a session with them. And not only about lockdown and lockout, but even, if there's a student conflict, not to intervene, but to, report that to one of our staff members who will handle it. So we do have a session plan to kind of go over all the do's and don'ts.
Any further questions, comments? All right, move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Old business, approval of amended facilities committee charge. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the facilities committee charge as amended. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
We discussed this. Thank you. Been a long
Just
summer.
between with Joe's time.
Excellent. Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? And we're at new business. Approval of new business items. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the new business items as presented. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Just the approval of the code of conduct and the emergency remote instruction plan with modifications made as previously discussed in the hearing.
We could say as amended.
As amended. Any other questions, comments?
Just two items, obviously, three. You're approving the tax warrant, so the issuance of the tax warrant, so we can print out and send tax bills. The extension of the contract for Orange County to do the transportation that we just went over. And we have change orders for minor contracting that have to do with some closeout items and the fact that there was a change order to get an expedited delivery of doors from a different manufacturer. That didn't actually happen, so there's another change order that's reversing previous one. So those are some of the financial and facilities related items that are on there.
And I will just add a big thank you to GSEP. We're accepting for full grant awards, and it's one lump sum, but just to give you an idea, they're bringing back our immigration field trip where our students, Spalvano takes them down to Ellis Island. It's a very exciting trip every year. There's community-wide book read, Deer Week, which is in October, and also mindful yoga. That is a school-wide program that GSEP makes possible. So again, we thank them for all their hard work and bringing these great programs to our students.
Wonderful. Okay. Nobody has any other comments? We'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Our second public comment. I'm going to move on past that since no public board member comments. Jocelyn, you're up first. Okay. I'm going to go around instead of in alphabetical order. Order. Kent.
Was ready.
Okay.
No,
I'm gonna skip Dan.
no comment.
Yeah, well, this is a fairly intense week for, I guess, three of us here. I think Carl and I know, Courtney and myself, we're losing our firstborns to higher education. So this is a shameless plea for compassion.
Indeed.
And maybe if anybody wants to buy us a drink, feel free. It's kind of a big deal.
For several.
Sorry. Big deal, right?
It gets better pretty quickly. And I'm only, I'm a couple of years in, so.
I told my
I'm
daughter-
holding you to that.
I told my daughter's in down in Tisch, Washington Square, that meetings to go in and every once a week to make sure that she eats her vegetables. You can imagine how thrilled she was to hear.
Joe can route you there the best way possible.
Jen?
I just want to echo the thanks to the foundation for their donation to the school, and also, again, to thank Joe. I don't know, unless you've used Transponder, that you know what a heavy lift it is the very first year to get all the speed limits on all the roads in, all the curves, and you should be commended for that work.
Yeah,
It's like a lot of work. Thank you. And I have no other comments. You already heard me talk enough, and thanks for listening to me fumble through. Sarah will be back with you next time. So with that, we're going to enter into executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of discussing the school history of a particular student in accordance with their FERPA rights, discussing the building emergency response plan, and discussing current litigation with the school district council. I have a motion. Move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Great job.
nice one.